Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, coming to you live from Star City. It's me, your Madman Mayor Dustin, and today, since Media Monday was canceled, we're going to do Talk to Me Tuesday, and I got two special guests. The phenomenal, well known, and well loved Karl Kessler, and Chris. Chris, what's your last name?
Warner, Chris Warner.
Chris Warner, both of Doghouse Rules, and we want to give them a special congratulations because as of today, they have done the impossible, the thing that I've tried twice and haven't achieved. Third
It'll come,
time's
man.
third time's a charm. You actually knocked it out on Kickstarter. Congratulations, Dust Bunnies. Life Under the Couch has funded.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
today, about I don't know, 5, 6 hours ago, maybe. No, I guess more like 8 hours
Something
ago.
like that. Yeah.
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 Yeah, this
Feels
is
good.
this is a pretty unique project because this is specifically designed for children, right?
Yes. Well, we call it a game for heroes of all ages, but definitely being designed with children being able to play. So parents being able to play with their children. A role-playing game. It is a Savage Worlds licensed product. But yes, we want it to be able to be played with kids, and that is definitely a primary goal of the game.
I got to tell you, that's admirable. A lot of RPGs that are made are actually made for adults or for adults with developmental issues, but but RPGs, tabletop RPGs are actually social. They're very social, and they're a great way to teach young people social skills and teamwork. So kudos to you for that. How
Thanks.
it, what inspired Dust Bunnies? Because this is coming even for me. This is a pretty unique idea. Like life under the couch. You're playing like actual dust bunnies.
Right, sentient balls of dust and fur and hair and whatnot under the couch. So the inspirations were several, really. I mean, both Carl and I have been role playing gamers for a long, long time, and Doghouse Rules have been publishing things since 2004. Um, but we'd never done something quite like this before, and I played in a number of different games, and I really wanted, I have a son, but he's grown now; he's an adult. But I wish I had had, games when he were younger that we could have played besides board games, role playing games that I could have felt, very comfortable playing with them. And so that was one of my long time thoughts and inspiration. Another is a show that used to be on public broadcasting called The Big Comfy Couch,
Okay.
and they had dust bunnies on that show. It was a kids show, and the dust bunnies were little mischievous characters, that were in the background of the show. And then some other games, sort of silly games. Low Life is one of them, where
Right.
it's a different kind of role playing game. But we wanted to take it a little bit further, and you mentioned teamwork, and that's what the Dust Bunnies do. They're mischievous characters, but they work together as a team, and we call it a Dust Bunny band.
Right.
So the band works together to do stuff, and basically you're playing these sentient little balls of fluff, having adventures around the house, around what we call the host's house. The bipeds, if you will, who compared to the dust bunnies are like Greek titans. They're tremendously huge giants, and dust bunnies are little teeny things. Uh, but yeah, those are a couple of inspirations, like I said, and having played many games over the years where the essential goal was to harm things and then take their stuff, wanted to do something a little bit different where that's not the goal of the game. The goal of the game is to work together and accomplish things. And again, mischief is a key element of the game. We're adding a core skill of mischief to the Dust Bunny characters, and that could be anything from stealing the host's keys to collecting treasures, which we call baubles. Dust
Right.
bunnies call them baubles, but they don't collect stuff like that because they're trying to amass wealth or anything like that. It's the sheer challenge and the joy of it and the excitement, and so they get into many adventures where they're doing that sort of thing around the house.
It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like one of those situations where It almost sounds zen, like the traditional goal isn't the goal for this game.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, it's to have fun, and we have been playtesting, and it has been fun. We've
Yeah.
playtested with children and adults, and it's been pretty fun. We had a playtest recently with some friends of Karl's, including two new people who had never played a role-playing game before, and were interested in it, but were sort of intimidated by some of the more traditional role-playing games that are out there. But they had a great time, and they said this was a really cool way to introduce them to role playing, where it was that cooperative teamwork sort of effort, and they were guided by the other players that were more experienced, and we had a lot of fun. We laughed very hard, throughout the night, and same thing the other night. I did a test with the local group that I play in, and it was a very boisterous and silly and fun game. Uh, and we really, testing out some of the rules and polishing them and making sure that they're working better. That's one of the things that we're doing right now. But every time we've done it, people have had fun, and that's the key thing. It's a laugh fest, really. It's not to be taken completely seriously, obviously. And the tests that have been run by for kids, my son ran one, and it was pretty good. The kids had fun too, and they really got into it using their imaginations and pretending to be a dust bunny. So it's been pretty fun.
All right,
Yeah.
so go ahead,
Oh,
Carl.
sorry. No, I was just going to add that even though it's a game kind of geared towards kids and families like that, we had a fantastic night role playing, and there was nothing. We're all adults, but you get a funny voice, you get into character, you get to play, mischievous little things for one night, and I could see playing this many nights, just getting into that character and uh, just having a good time. I mean, it's just a wholesome good time, and it was so much fun.
Nice. Well, I've said it before, and some people in my group have said it before. It's like you can learn Savage Worlds within a night, and you can spend a lifetime improving on it. Which lends to the question, why go with Savage Worlds as a system for something like Dust Bunnies, and how much tweaking did you have to do to make it work for your setting?
That's an excellent question. I
Yeah.
mean, the primary reason is that Karl and I play a lot of Savage Worlds, and we know that rule system well. And then
Right.
in the last 6 or 7 years, we've published several different products under the ACE licensee with Pinnacle. And
Right.
so it's a rule set that we know well. It's designed for flexibility, wherein you can play various genres, in a Savage Worlds game. Um, and so when I first conceived of this idea, I talked to Karl about it, and I said, I'm not sure how to do it, but I'm thinking I'll just adapt the Savage Worlds rules and do, under our ACE license, and because I thought the flexibility would work. And so the answer to the second part of your question, how much adaptation are we doing? We're definitely adapting it, but we're using pretty much all of the Savage Worlds rule set. Um, we're changing some of the pieces of it, but for instance, we are using the combat rules to govern most of the game. But Dust Bunnies don't really fight.
Right.
So we've substituted the fighting skill for a skill called defense.
Okay.
And so, but Dust Bunnies take defense if they want to. It's not a core skill, but they can take defense if they want to. And it works exactly like parry mechanically, or excuse me, like fighting mechanically, where your parry is derived from your defense, just like it would be from fighting. So there's no adaptation. We don't have to change the combat rules at all. But what the Dust Bunnies do is almost everything they do is tests. They support each other, of course, because teamwork's part of the game. But instead of doing attacks, they do tests.
Right.
So if they have opponents or foes or even just an encounter they're doing, a lot of almost everything they do comes down to a test. And so fighting, for example, is still part of the game because, as I said before, the mice in the house or the house cat, they don't care about Dust Bunny philosophy. So, the cat still might take a swipe at one of them, and the cat might have fighting, but the Dust Bunnies would not attack back. They would try to trick the cat, outwit the cat. And now that I mentioned that, and I don't want to talk too much. I want Karl to talk some too, but I'll just mention one of the prime things we do is we call tests for the most part trixes. And so trixes are what Dust Bunnies do. And we have a creative trixes table that they use. If they get a raise, they get to roll on the creative trixes table, and that does additional things beyond what a normal test would do. And we, have built some rules around that and edges. And we have a whole set of creative trixes edges that essentially replace the combat edges for Dust Bunny characters. You can still use the combat edges, and a GM might, in our adventures too, we have creatures that might bite, but the Dust Bunnies don't. So
that defensive living, if you're such a fragile character, makes a lot more sense, because I don't expect balls of hair and dust to have a lot of good offense.
right.
Not at all.
I mean, so yeah, like being able to outsmart and outmaneuver. I mean, for one thing, the first thought is, hey, these humans, they're like the Colossus of Rhodes. They're gigantic. But
Right.
even at the same time, a mouse would be the size of what? A wolf or a bear? And a cat would be the size of a dragon. So you are anything bigger than an aphid or a flea, you're in trouble. And they're armored.
Yeah.
Yep. That all figures into the game too. We do some talk about size in there, and in fact, one of the Dust Bunny abilities is fun size. So it's
Right.
a new size category. We call it fun size. And we have some. That's where some of the adaptation comes in, because scale, size and scale are relative, and we talk about that. But yes, they use defense. They might use defense as a test. They might use persuasion as a test. They might use their mischief as a test, or performance, and there's all kinds of ways that you can do tests, and that's what we really dive into in the game. Karl, you must have some thoughts too. I know you. Karl's been heavily
Yeah.
involved. It was my original idea, but without Karl, it wouldn't be where it is.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know that we were on Chris and I were both on the Savage Pathfinder squad that helped that start up. So we had a behind the scenes of Shane and the guys going over rules and things like that. So we knew right off the bat that Dust Bunnies could easily. I mean, we could easily just fit it in Savage Worlds. Maybe just change a few things, like what Chris just said. But for sure, it's just such a fun system for a setting like this. I mean, you've got tokens for bennies, you've got playing cards, and it's such a like you mentioned earlier. It's such an easy system. Like if you never played it before, like we had two guys in the playtest, never played any role playing games, jumped right in, and they were just rolling dice and figuring out aces, and they were like, "Oh, look at that!" They're rolling those dice. But we knew right away. I think Savage Worlds would be a great fit for it.
Yeah, and then the spirit of the game is, again, you're not fretting about whether you're going to kill the big bad monster.
Right.
You're doing fun stuff, and so that sort of, for me, it sort of removes the anxiety that you might have if you're a new player. What do I do? What do I do? I don't want to fail. And it's like, no, just do something. You're a
Right.
mischievous little dust bunny. Just do what comes to mind, and we'll help you make the rolls. We'll tell you what to roll. Based on what you want to do. So that worked very well with them. That was actually a really good test. They weren't children; they were young adults.
Right.
But it was still interesting and useful to have them play and see how they
All right. So
adapted to the game.
funny little anecdote. In terms of like development and age, it's actually easier for children to think of simple answers, and adults, because we have the ability to process abstract. I'll give you an example. One of the best ways to illustrate this: how do you stick an elephant in the refrigerator?
Don't know.
You don't know. Karl,
One bit at a time, one piece at a time.
if you were to ask a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old would
Yeah.
say, "Well, you open the door and you push him in."
Right. It's simple, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And I get that kind of vibe, like the more you talk about it, and looking at some of the art. Uh, Speaking of which, what can you tell me about your artist? There's a very unique style for Dust Bunnies.
Yeah. I mean, so the artist's name is Manuel Magalhaes. He
Okay.
has been doing art with us for years on other products. including Fort Griffin, our Fort Griffin setting, and I'm blanking right now, Karl. What else?
Oh, Quick Quest, early on Quick Quest, he did that. Fort
Uh,
Griffin, some of our buckshots,
that's
our
right.
adventures for,
Yep.
I think one of them, right?
Grave robbers as well.
Grave Robbers, he did Grave
Oak,
Robbers.
Oak
He's
Run.
got a fantastic pen and ink style that
Right.
I think it's great. You
I
know,
think it, it definitely lends itself very well to this particular bit. If you were to
Yeah.
take your mind's eye picture as the creators, what's the closest thing within your own vision that you could relate this setting to?
hmm, that's a good question.
That's a tough question. I mean, again,
Yeah.
one of my inspirations was the Big Comfy Couch, that TV show.
Right.
Um,
So
then,
70s PBS, a great place to
yeah,
live.
it's
Well,
probably more like late '80s, early '90s
Okay.
PBS. Yeah,
I
but
know from the a player's point of view, because Chris has run the play tests for us,
Hmm.
and from playing it, I kind of got a little bit of a Smurfs vibe in
Okay.
the '80s cartoon because we're like little dudes,
Right.
just trying to do stuff and helping each other, banding together against bigger
And the Smurfs
obstacles.
never hurt anybody. They always
Exactly.
found like the kindest way to resolve their problems.
Yeah.
All
yeah, no,
right.
that's a good example. I think Karl hit that
Yeah.
one pretty well.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Doghouse Rules. You guys are primarily known for westerns, and
I think
not
that's
fantasy
probably
or horror westerns, like actual western westerns.
yeah, traditional Western. We do some weird stuff too. We've published some stuff recently. One of Karl's brainstorms recently, Night of the Grizz,
Okay.
which is a weird Western. But the Fort Griffin setting was originally and still a traditional Western. We've added some weird ideas in it that you can do if you want to, run it more like a weird Western. But it's really traditional Western.
Yeah,
So,
we started back in the early 2000s with
Yeah,
one book called Sidewinder Recoiled, and it was based off of the right when D20 Modern came out. So
right.
we used the OGL for that and did like D20 Modern versions of just traditional westerns from a book that an old partner of ours, Jeff Spakes,
yeah, the founder.
is yeah the founder did a book called Sidewinder. It was just called Sidewinder, right, Chris?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, Sidewinder Adventures in the Wild West or something.
yeah, something like that. So that was just straight up like 3.0 D20. And so he got the word that the D20 Modern was coming out, um, and he assembled a team. Like I can't because it was
Yeah,
just Jeff, right? And
Jeff and I were friends, and he knew
okay,
Karl, and he recruited a couple of us to get together, and that became Doghouse Rules. And
right,
so
it was five of us.
that was our
Yeah,
first product, and so yeah, Western was definitely where we started,
yeah,
and we did some settings and a few adventures and such, and so yeah.
yeah.
But also, I mean, it was really 2018 or so when we kind of got rejuvenated, and mostly by Karl's idea for the game we published, Trailer Park Shark Attack.
Right.
And
Which is
so
a
yeah,
zany setting.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun, crazy
Yeah.
uh, B movie Saturday Night Shark movie that you're
I
playing
know
in.
that Jared Gunning absolutely loved the concept of it,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
yeah, and sharks are effectively the bacon of B movies at this point.
Right,
Exactly.
right. And so it's very different than Dust Bunnies, obviously, and very different than our Western stuff. But it was a fun game, a game that you don't have to think too much about. Oh, what's going to happen to my character? The whole idea is your character's probably going to not make it. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tornado of sharks. I mean, you're gonna have a bad day.
Yeah. So that game has been really fun, and like I say, Karl played that. If you've never played in one of Karl's convention games, you haven't lived yet. But Karl was playing that as a convention game, and told me about it, and I said, hey, this is awesome. We should make this into a product, and so we did. And we've done some supplements for that. We call Parker packs, where there's more Parkers that you can play with, and then we recently did Sharkano, which is another adventure for Trailer Park Shark Attack.
Right, Karl,
So
you're
that, go
okay.
ahead.
No, Karl, you're actually well known for a lot of your convention games. Can you tell us some about some of your more memorable ones.
Oh man, there's been so many. But recently I dug up. This one was really a lot of fun. Mystery Men, Savage Worlds Mystery Men, where you play from the movie Mystery Men. Um, I just redid that one to Suede. It was in the old deluxe rules, so I ran that at ChupacabraCon just recently, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I started running convention games in the early when Savage Worlds came out, the earlier Explorers edition. I started we started playing at home. I'm like, man, this would be fun for a convention game. This is a I could really put a lot of cool stuff in this in 4 hours and have a really good time. I started with like I was on this trip of doing these League of like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic
Yeah.
books and the movie.
From like the different
Uh,
eras.
yeah, I was that was my first ones. I was doing the different eras. Like I think I started. I remember right. My first one was the 90s. No, not
I thought it was the 70s.
no. That was like the last one I did. Actually,
Okay.
I was jumping around. I think it was the 90s. I did like it was like a zombie one.
Right.
Where there's all kinds of characters from 90s movies that come in and have to stop this uh, bad guy from turning the world into zombies or something like zombie apocalypse. Then I did the 2000s, then I did the 80s, and the 70s was the last one I did. So in each one, there would be you would play characters from either pop culture, a TV show, or a movie from that era. So I think the 2000s, the vampires were really popular in movies and stuff. If I remember right, I could be getting this wrong with the 90s. It's been a while,
Well, the 90s
but I
had
did.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay, maybe it was the 90s then
Right.
that had the vampires. Because I had like Ash in there. I had Buffy as a character.
Right.
A lot of cool stuff like that. So I would theme the games that way. The 80s was just a pop culture mash of Mr. T or B.A. Baracus and Charlie from Firestarter, all these crazy characters.
I
It
remember
was, it
Doc
was
and
fun.
Marty were there.
Yeah, more. Yeah, Doc Brown was there, and Teen Wolf. I had Teen Wolf as a character. the other, the other Michael J. Fox character. So I did a bunch of games like that, and I go all out. I used to make custom miniatures and stuff like that. I chop up HeroClix or miniatures I'd buy from Reaper. I'd cut stuff up and glue them together, and it was just a lot of fun. It's a hobby within a hobby for me of doing
And
that
then the
stuff.
three, and then three. He does a lot of three-dimensional, tabletop stuff too. So
Yeah.
I've seen like the dice that were they were bullets, but were they dice or ammo trackers?
Uh, they were probably ammo trackers if I
Yeah,
remember right. Yeah,
ammo
I
trackers, and then like a couple of
yeah,
times you've done character
yeah.
sheets that were VHS boxes.
right.
Yeah, I did a Monster Hunters Club game which was set in the '80s, kind of like Stranger Things meets Goonies.
Right, Carl.
And
We might have to have an intervention, man. Like you.
well, my day job, I work at an ad agency,
Right.
and we used to do stuff like that for clients. Like they would come in and we wanted to make something special for them, so we'd like make a 3D prop of something like we'll restrip a Monopoly board game and put this guy's favorite places around the Monopoly game and give him that, they stuff like that. So I like the 3D element of things like that. It's cool because you can hand something to somebody in the game and it just immerses, they just get into it. It's just a little bit more. It's fun.
I, I say I played in one of Karl's games, and it was one of his Weird West convention games, and he had the big mountain, not mountain, a hill, I guess is the
Oh
better.
yeah, yeah,
Had the hill, and in the town he had all the buildings and everything, and I had a blast jumping up on top of the building and hiding
yeah,
behind the sign, and as the
yeah.
gun battle's going on,
And I
and just
love it when players do that.
using the terrain was fun. It
Yeah,
wasn't. It made me think more about what I was moving and doing.
right.
When I had the opportunity to climb up on a building, see how that worked, jump up on the barrel, and then get up on the building, and
To me, that's what makes a fun game. Is I mean, you could put out a map, sure,
Right.
but someone might not think oh, well, there's a roof to this building. They're not thinking that way. They're just like, okay, I move over here,
Right.
or something, or
But an
I
actual terrain is three dimensional. It creates a
yeah,
concept of
yeah,
space.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Savage Worlds is so easy for me, anyways, to come up with a game and to stat out the uh, player characters that you might be playing for those the 4 hours and the bad guys and come up with story. I have time to do all this stuff, because it's so quick and easy for me.
Yeah.
Just like, oh yeah, I like that ability. We're gonna add that to that dude, and I have a bad guy. So
I so I got spoiled because coming up I would read the books and I would read and ingest the setting, but I didn't have anybody to actually play with.
yeah.
So I never actually got to understand prep time. So actual play time, I started out on Savage Worlds.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everybody else is playing Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. And I
Yeah.
found out, unfortunately, I don't like those systems because you can never prep enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel
There's
like
a lot to them.
with Savage Worlds, I feel like you can literally just go right off the cuff. It's like you can take your improv skills and it just works. And if there's a question, it's like, okay, just roll me 2d6 for whatever stat I'm thinking of.
Right. Right.
Is it a 4?
Yeah.
It should
I
be a
agree.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I was saying earlier when we were testing Dust Bunnies the other night with the new players. We just said, "What do you want to do? Tell us what you want to do," and then we would say, "Okay, that sounds like you need to roll a mischief, or that sounds like an athletics roll. Here's what you do: take your
Yeah.
one die and take your other die, roll them. You need a four."
Yeah. Chris was like, don't just concentrate on the sheet. That's cool to look at it, but just tell us what you want to do, and we'll tell you what you need to roll, or we'll figure it out, together
They
on
were playing
what
the
skill
pre-gen
level is.
characters that we have in the game too. So they
Right.
had a short
Yeah.
description that they had a clear idea what that character was, in
Right.
3 or 4 sentences, and just riff on that. And so, like you say, it's very Savage Worlds is very good for that sort of thing. You can improvise right away with just a little bit of information.
I feel like there are the rules, and specifically, there is a rule that can be used in a lot of different places. Like, I know that everybody, with the addition of the creative combat people, are like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I can wade through a whole army now and just not take up the entire session.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
the mischief skill, what does it do?
So it's a good question. It's something that as we're playtesting, we're trying to hone in a little bit better, but it really covers a lot of ground. So uh, it, it covers things like filching baubles, right? So again, they consider treasures baubles, and they like to collect them. So collecting baubles might be trying to take something from underneath the host's feet while they're sitting in their big chair watching TV. They might be trying to find a peanut or something like that landed beneath them. That would be the kind of thing a dust bunny would do. It might also involve playing a trick on them, and again using mischief as a test, maybe to steal their eyeglasses. So when you wake up in the morning, what happened to my glasses? Well, now you know, right? The dust bunnies moved them, and so mischief covers a lot of ground like that. It would also cover some things that thievery would in a usual Savage Worlds game, like operating a device, locking or unlocking or toggling or untoggling something, things like that. That the dust bunnies might end up trying to do. So mischief is sort of a magical power. It isn't magic. They do have magic. Magic exists. All dust bunnies know that. But mischief is sort of representation of their magical, sentient nature. So it is fuzzy sometimes because it could overlap with something else. And sometimes we'll say, you could do that with mischief or you could do that with performance. Which one do you want to use? And we encourage people to do it different ways. So you're not constantly using the same skill over and over. So, that's why it worked out pretty well. I did have a concern that maybe it would become overused and that's all anybody would roll. But in the playtest, it's been a good mix. People have found uses for all their skills and made various roles, including mischief, but not leaning on mischief, I would say.
It
So
sounds almost like The Secret Life of Arietti or the Littles, only instead of small
Mm.
people, it's actual like hair and dust,
Yeah,
which
Right.
come from people. So I mean that makes
exactly.
sense there,
People and pets and what have you. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so the big elephant in the room is if a character, if a dust bunny is incapacitated, are they gone or can they just be reformed by putting their materials back together?
That's an excellent question. Very insightful. So, one of the things, because again, game for kids and families, we're using
Mm-hmm.
the heroes never die setting rules. So, a dust bunny may, in fact, become incapacitated and may be out of the game temporarily or that game session or something like that, depending on what happens. But they're not out forever,
Right.
and so they can be reconstituted. Interesting that you say that. One of their abilities is assimilation,
Mm-hmm.
and so they can assimilate more dust and hair and pet fur, dental floss or whatever happens to be on the ground, right? And reconstitute themselves. And so,
The
uh,
cyborgs are made of paper clips.
yeah, so yep. So we, you know,
Good idea.
we, we
Writes it
it was
down
funny.
furiously.
we some of the things that we do, like we have threads of steel as an edge you can take. So again, the threads, maybe you have some special threads that you picked up that make you stronger, or you can resist the effects of the wounds, that you might take during the game. And so we use all those regular Savage Worlds mechanics. You still take wounds, you can still be incapacitated, but they don't necessarily die. They can come back, and even if they got sucked up by one of their primary enemies, the Great Vacuum.
Right.
I'm very fond of saying all dust bunnies abhor a vacuum. But if they end up getting sucked up by the vacuum, they're not necessarily dead. They're inside a vacuum, and they can maybe get out some days. Eventually, that vacuum's going to get emptied, or maybe they can dungeon crawl their way out of the vacuum. That might even be some adventures involved there, right? So, yeah, that's definitely how we're going about it. Heroes don't die. They may be, out for the count for a little bit, but they can come back.
Alrighty. Well, that being said, how long the Kickstarter just funded? We're gonna leave a link to that down below. But what can you tell us about some of the stretch goals? I know one of them is a coloring book.
Actually, I'm going to let Karl talk a little bit about that too, but I'll just say that's actually that's not a stretch goal. That's part of our regular package.
Oh,
So,
so if you
Yeah.
pick up Dust Bunnies, you pick up a coloring book to go along with it.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
So the funny you mentioned that. So the art, Manuel did the art. He did line drawing for it, and I colored it. So all the colored art that you'll see in the book, I photoshopped and colored. But we take his line drawings, and we thought this would be great for a coloring book. So we have a coloring book in there. It's just gonna be pages and pages of his awesome cute, awesome line art. Some of stretch goals. What do we got? We've got.
well, talk a little bit more about the package, because
Okay.
it's interesting. Dustin, right before you started this, you said,
Yeah.
we'll be ready to roll, and that's Dust Bunnies roll. That's how they move, but it's
Yeah.
also something they say, let's roll, and that sort of is a core concept for Dust
Yeah.
Bunnies. So we have what we call the ready to roll package.
Mm-hmm.
That does have the coloring book. It has a play mat, some character sheets that also have color me Dust Bunnies with the pre-gens, or you can draw your own. We have some GM screen inserts and some quick reference cards with some of the special things like the Creative Tricks' table and those Tricks' edges we talked about and things like that for quick reference. Um, so that's all part of the ready to roll package that everybody at $25 or more gets um, when you pledge on the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And then we also have a super ready to roll package, which adds a Novice Adventures PDF. By the way, most of these also will have a print on demand version.
Right.
So the Novice Adventures are 3 adventures that would get you from novice to seasoned ranked after you played the quick start adventure, which is in the core rulebook. So then we have the stretch goals, and that's that. I'll shut up for a minute and let Karl talk about that. We just started talking about those today because we made the project goal.
Yeah, so the stretch goals, we got cards coming, power cards.
Okay.
We have, I'm drawing a blank here, Chris.
The archetype cards as well.
Archetype cards, which are going to be tarot size, because that's where we're mainly going through, we are going through drive
Drive
through
through.
with all this. And there was a third. The third thing is a miniatures, paper miniatures. Um, we're going to take some of the art and shrink them down so you can cut them out for paper miniatures and use them however you want to in your game.
Yeah, and then the next, we're almost to that. We're almost to that stretch goal now.
Right.
And the one after that is we recruited. Recruited may not be the right word. We asked very kindly a
Yeah.
bunch of our friends from around the industry would they write some one sheets for us. So we have some 10 people that have agreed to do them with us. Some pretty big names too in the Savage Worlds community. Um, so that's the next stretch goal. Mostly that stretch goal just pays our costs, so we can pay those folks to write something for us and maybe do some additional artwork and that sort of thing. So the stretch goals are really not doing anything for us. They're just enhancing the game. We're adding some value with these pieces in the stretch goals. The main project goal was what we needed to do the work and all that stuff and pay for the art for Manuel and all those things.
Right.
So the stretch goals are just sweetening the whole thing the way I look at it. We're not trying to make any money off those.
So I got to name the writers because we got some really cool names. So if anybody wants to pitch in more to get these awesome writers, because I'm really excited to have everyone on board here. We've got Jody Black,
Right.
said she's going to write one. Our friend David Anderson, who just wrote some Savage World stuff. Morning Shap and Eric
Winter
Lamoureux.
Eternal and Wise
Yep.
Guys. Just insert
Yep.
imagination.
Exactly.
I did a one shot. I did the messenger for Wise Guys.
Oh yeah. We've got our friend Candace McAfee. That she is an awesome streamer now, and she's been my GM running Savage Worlds for us all through the pandemic and still today. She's an amazing GM. She holds her own, and she's a writer as by trade. She works at my ad agency where I work, so she's a writer. And Frank Turfler Jr., if you might know him from on DriveThru 2, he's got tons of maps that he's made, adventures, things like that.
He's actually had Free Map Friday for a while now. Like
Yeah, it's a beautiful stuff.
some of them
He's
are
on
good,
Patreon.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, Middle Kingdoms,
Mm-hmm.
something I forget the rest of it, but yeah, he's amazing stuff. And last but not least, we've got three people from the Savage Inside or Savage Interlude. Sorry, Ron Blessing, Daryl Hayhurst, and Tracy Sizemore.
Okay.
They've all said that they would be willing to write something for us, and we feel so. When they all said good.
Yeah, you also Tim Early as well.
Tim Early,
Tim
yes.
Holler.
How can I forget Tim from Holler? Yes.
Oh man, and Tim is like a college professor, so you're gonna
I
get
know.
He's a writing professor.
like he's a
I
writing
know.
professor. It's like my gosh,
How can I forget Tim? He's one.
So
he's
the
yeah,
thesis of dust.
yeah. I can't wait to see what he comes up with.
I live in Appalachia, so yeah,
do you?
Yeah,
yeah.
Wow.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so we're really excited about those, obviously,
Yeah.
and I feel humbled to know that all those folks are going to be writing something for us, and we reached out to them and said, hey, we'd like to make that we'd like to make those things a stretch goal, these one sheets, and we want to reach the goal first, but if you're willing to do it, we'll take that next step, and they all said yes, so that's great.
A lot of aces have had some trouble with Kickstarter in the past, and there's been some talk about crowdfunding isn't what it used to be. Being that you have succeeded in getting your project funded, what advice would you give to anyone that was going to take their project to Kickstarter?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'll start by saying we were pretty hesitant to do a Kickstarter at all. We've been publishing stuff for almost 20 years, and we had never done a Kickstarter. We
Right.
would, our model was we would think up something and we'd publish it. We'd produce it and publish it, and if we made some money on it, we'd reinvest that in whatever the next project was. And sometimes we'd have ideas that might include several follow-ups, but it would take us a while to get to them because we had to go through that process every time. And so, um, one of the reasons that I think I was convinced, I think Karl too, uh, and this was with some help from Eric, who had done Kickstarter being fulfilled completely by drive-through, including the printed project part of the project. And he talked to us about that. We didn't really want to get into the inventory business,
Right.
and so doing it this way, we can still have printed books and printed materials like the cards that Karl was mentioning and so forth. But drive-through does all of that, and so we can keep the pledge levels low too, um, because we're not having to produce all that stuff. All we have to do is produce proofs, and make sure that the product's good. So we did do budgeting. We thought really hard about the budgeting and how many proofs are we going to have to get based on our experience having done this before, and just calculating all that money and say, okay, what's it going to cost to do this project, and to do a bunch of things at once is what we were doing differently here. Instead of spacing out, all the things that we've talked about over time, we're going to try to do them all at once, and raise the funds to pay the artist and pay editor and
Writers.
and writers and all that stuff, right? Um, so if I was going to give advice, I would say think hard about what you're doing, and when they give you the advice of make a budget, that's real. Don't just say, oh, that's real. No, get your spreadsheet out and calculate everything you can think of that you might have to pay for this, and then set your goal accordingly. And then you'll have a realistic goal. You're not just making up a number. We felt this was a very realistic goal, and we weren't sure we'd be able to reach it or not, but we knew that if we reached it, we were going to be good, and we were going to be able to produce, all the rewards that we promised in a timely fashion. And part of that was because we had done stuff before, so we know what the timeline looks like, and it's not new to us. It's not our first project, but it is our first Kickstarter, and so I've Karl knows I was very nervous about whether we would make it, and but now that we have, I feel better, and I'm really looking forward to completing everything and getting the rewards out there.
Congratulations.
Karl, do you have any other thoughts? I know I ramble on sometimes.
Just I want to reiterate the drive-through program that we're using, where it's the voucher system that they have.
Well, it's not voucher. That Kickstarter
not
doesn't want you
voucher.
to say voucher.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, what is it called then? What?
Well, you have the option to buy
option.
a print-on-demand version
Yes.
at the base cost, at the
Yes.
absolute base cost, right?
Right.
So
Right.
when you pledge at a level that has that print-on-demand in the reward level, you will get you will get from drive-through through us, right? Uh, an email that says it's available, and you can buy it at the what it costs to be printed plus shipping and tax.
Which brings down the cost to you guys, the backers and stuff, tremendously. And we're not, like Chris said, we're not sitting on like hundreds of boxes of books and cards, and we're not a warehouse. We're just two guys working from our house.
So I actually before I was doing this, I used to do like interviews for AetherCon, and I did I believe it was Hal Greenwood, and he was talking about he invested in a project back before print on demand and before the digital age, and he lost $30,000 because they printed all the books, and the publishing company that he was printing them through just closed down. $30,000, and he had to go and pick them up from the warehouse. Like, so I think this whole digital, yeah, this whole digital revolution is glorious. Like, I don't know, like, shameful plug for a moment. I'm actually crap, guys. It is not recording anymore.
Uh-oh. When did it crap out?
No, it's recording again.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
Edit.
All right, sorry. So, I'm actually an author myself, and I'm so thankful for this whole digital revolution because I'm able to publish my books through Kindle. and I'm able to publish my setting books through DriveThruRPG. And it has made being an independent creator possible. Not easier, possible, because it is
Right.
like it's like the gates have been lifted. And I think right about now, anybody that has a desire to get that creative outlet out there, now's the time. Go in there, go ahead, get it done. So, giving advice for other aces and other creators, how would you recommend they go about finding things like authors or editors? Or, I mean, like artists or editors?
Yeah, so I'm certainly no expert on that, but what what I know is, especially with Savage Worlds and the Aces group, Pinnacle's, Ace licensees, there's a lot of communication between the Aces, and people talk about that stuff and say, hey, does anybody know an editor? And so getting involved in the community, is the first step, I guess. You'll meet people, and you'll have some resources that can point you in the right direction. And there's authors, there's writers out there, there's editors out there, there's freelance graphic designers like Karl, that can help you make the product look better. And that community has been good. Even if we don't end up necessarily always hiring somebody or being hired, just the idea that it's there, and you can communicate people and ask questions. And I'm in the email group, and there's questions every day that people ask and people answer, and provide help. And pretty
So,
cool.
so if you're for the aspiring aces out there, I take it that the advice is make use of the aces group.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I mean, I said it a lot more long-winded than that.
All right. Do you guys have a website, like a personal website that we can check out, or should we just go to Doghouse Rules on DriveThruRPG?
So we're on DriveThruRPG, but we also have our own website. It's doghouserules.net,
Okay.
and we don't collect any customer information or sell our products there, but we show all our products and talk about them, and then there's links directly to DriveThru to purchase.
All
So
right.
that the website's been around since Doghouse Rules formed in 2004. It's
Yeah.
gone through changes. It's not the way it used to be, but now, like I say, now it's just showcasing our products, and then takes you to DriveThru if you want to purchase something.
All right. So what is the future for Doghouse Rules? Now that Dust Bunnies is going through its cycle and it's about to get out there, are there things that we should look forward to? More shark attacks, more more adventures
Yeah.
in the wild wild west? Is there anything that you want to just throw out there that you feel like announcing, or something right off the cuff?
I mean, I could think of one. Karl, you're probably the best at one.
The TPSA one? Is that what you're thinking about? The trailer park?
I mean, that's one of them for sure. But
What's the other
I
one?
was also thinking of David's.
Oh yes, how could I forget about that?
Yeah,
Camp Terror. Okay,
yeah,
so David Anderson is a good friend of ours, and again, he's wrote some stuff, and I think he's edited some stuff for Pinnacle. I know he's a swag, Savage World swag. He has a Dungeon Delvers, I think it's called,
Okay.
out there on DriveThru. He's got this cool adventure that we played. Well, I played at ChupacabraCon. Chris actually lives in his area, and I've actually played with him live. It's called Camp Terror. His idea was to kind of take the idea of Trailer Park Shark Attack, where it's a funnel, and kind of put like a 80s slasher twist to it. So you all play randomly drawn kids that are going to summer camp. You are the camp
well, they're the camp
counselors.
counselors.
You're the
Yeah.
camp counselors, and you're there to set things up. And of course, you go into slasher movie mode with that. I mean, I don't want to say too much about it because it's a fantastic adventure. I played Chupa with it, and it was so much fun. Uh,
It's
I'm, I begged him, like, dude, we've got to put this out for you.
so yeah, it's based in the Trailer Park Shark Attack model, like Karl said, with the funnel, where
The
you're,
funnel.
you're picking a character, and if your character dies, you just pick a new character, and
Right.
so in a slasher movie, people don't make it, and so
Right.
very similar to the Trailer Park Shark Attack, where yeah, you might get bitten in half by a shark, but okay, just take a new character and keep playing, and it's the same kind of structure, meant to be played in a single or maybe two gaming sessions, depending on your group, and really
That's
designed to
quite,
be played in a single session. Yeah.
it's quite a long ways too. He wrote the whole thing, and it was edited, and I actually put in layout. I'm just tweaking the layout. The layout's almost completely done. We're working on artwork and things like that to get together. Handouts, maybe. We're still deciding on that because there's a lot of cool clues that you can find in the game.
Right.
So my suggestion was like, give them handouts, of clues and stuff like that. And I think we're all pretty much on the same boat, thinking that's a good idea. So we're just getting a few things buttoned away with it, but it's coming along pretty darn well. If I'm gonna say so myself, I can't wait for that to come out. It's gonna be so much
The
fun.
sheer joy on your face just says it all. I'm like, it's a little like I'm getting this whole vibe. Like, there's a little bit of Voorhees, there's a little bit of Sleepaway Camp,
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
yeah,
little bit of like constantly teleporting
yeah,
bad guy.
yeah. I'm the guy that likes to watch horror movies like year round.
Uh huh.
So this is like right up my alley. I love this crazy stuff. So yeah, it's
I
gonna be fun.
I
He did a
feel
great job. David did
uh,
a great job.
the great thing about like the old 1970s and 80s horror films is they were morality plays, but they weren't trying to be Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Well,
It's a
Yeah,
all
fun
some
game. I enjoyed playing in it. I played in the
yeah.
playtest, David's early playtest before he took it to the con, and it was great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. He has some cool rules too that go along with a teen slasher movie from the 80s, according to what act you're in. That's
oh, okay.
really cool. I don't want to
Yeah.
give too much away, but
Yeah.
Chris, I really enjoyed those rules.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's very good.
Yeah,
We're having fun working with David on that, and so that's
yeah,
one
he's a great
thing.
guy. Yeah,
All right.
Carl mentioned another thing too. We'll just talk about quickly, and that's that Trailer Park Shark Attack's been really a fun game and a good game for us. And Carl. Gosh, let Carl tell the story, but he was asked by
go
his
ahead.
family, who aren't role players, to design a quick game that they could play at a family reunion. And so Carl came up with a Trailer Park Shark Attack version, played like with a dread, a rule set with a Jenga tower and dread.
So
And
we actually reached out to Epidiah Ravachol, uh, and I say, hey, I love your rules. Matter of fact, before I was running Savage Worlds convention games, I was running Dread convention
Okay.
games like a lot. Like I would go to Gen Con with just a Jenga tower and some character sheets, and I had a great time. So it's like really near and dear to me. I love that system. So I reached out to him just on a whim, saying, "Hey, could I possibly use your rules in this new version of Trailer Park Shark Attack I'm thinking of?" And I told him the whole spiel, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, that's great. Uh, use do whatever you want to, man. That's awesome." You know?
and of course we're giving him credit talking about it now. But
Yeah,
also the product,
yeah.
it's definitely we're definitely grateful for that. And
Super nice
I
guy.
think Carl's working title is the Tumbling Tower version
Ah,
Right.
of
gotcha.
Trailer Park Shark
So
Attack. Yeah.
so it's a very rules light version of Trailer Park Shark Attack that obviously came from Savage Worlds, but it's kind of the same idea where you have a stack of characters. But of course, you have that Jenga tower that you're going to have to pull pieces to do stuff in the game. And I have rules for that and rules for the characters. And we're coming up with new art for the characters that we might pull into paper miniatures for the regular Trailer Park Shark Attack, the Savage
Yep.
Worlds version. So
Yep.
people have been asking for those for a long time.
Well, all right, gentlemen, we are coming up on the closeout of this interview. Closing thoughts. Anything you want to go ahead and plug? Any last little bits?
I don't think so. We talked about a bunch of stuff, so
Yeah.
just grateful to have the chance to talk to you. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Good meeting you too, man.
All right, Carl, we've known each. All right, so ladies and gentlemen,
I'm just kidding.
I know denizens of Star City and savages all over the world. The game is Dust Bunnies. It's live right now on Kickstarter. Link in the description below. It's already funded, but if you want to get in on some of the add-ons, go ahead and click it and back it. Your kids will love it. Doghouse Rules. Uh, Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being
It's
on
great.
board.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.